All right, NYB, welcome back. Episode 167 of the Minding Your Business podcast, entrepreneurship, real estate, trending news. There's no business like minding your own. We're so excited to be back to you with another episode. Every episode that I get to do for me is house money. So for a guy that wasn't in communications, that's business economics by background, this is house money for me. So thank y'all so much for your support. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your feedback. 5 star. Please go out on Apple Podcast and leave us a positive review. That helps us connect with more audience and share more great content all the way around. We're brought to you, of course, empowered as always by the Binge Podcast Network. And you can check us out at themybpodcast.com. Listen, I'm excited for today's guest. Comes to us from Atlanta, Georgia. You know, the joke we've always had in MYB community here is that all roads from Memphis, Tennessee, where I'm at, lead to Atlanta, Georgia. You can't really escape it. I mean, if we go to the airport and I'm flying out, and I fly for business a good bit, every connection goes through Atlanta. So my joke was always, I tell people I work with, you know, I think if I die, I'm gonna go to Atlanta first, and probably have to check in or go through TSA or something before I go wherever I'm going. But today I've got Mr. John Stoj here. He is an investment advisor with Verbatim Financial. And again, he's joining us here from Atlanta. So, John, thank you so much for being here on episode 167 of the Minding Your Business podcast.
No, I appreciate the opportunity, Ron, and it's a podcast I've listened to for a while now, and so I'm pretty happy to be finally a guest right here myself.
Yeah, well, that's good. It's good to know that I have one listener. I'm kidding. So no, I appreciate that, John. So let's get right into it. Man, you know, tell us who is John Stoj, and you spell your last name interesting, obviously with Stoj. And so, you know, we talked a little bit offline, and I was thinking of maybe there's 20 different ways I could go with trying to pronounce your last name. So I'm glad it's as simple as it is. But tell us a little bit about your background, because you got an interesting background that's a little different from kind of your typical investment advisor.
Yeah. It's so I mean, I've done a full 360, frankly, in my career. I started out in finance, sort of just in a really easy way. I tell people, ask me, why did I get into finance? It seems like you love it. Why did you get into it? Like, for instance, my wife's a doctor. I know she had a desire to be a doctor, like all her life, basically, right? I didn't have a desire to become a financial guru or analyst or even
Sure.
Even a pencil pusher all my life. But I had a friend whose cousin worked on Wall Street, and he you know, in college, and I was looking for a job, and he called me up and he said, and I was living in New Jersey at the time, and he called me up and he said, "Hey, John, what are you doing this afternoon?" I'm like, well, I don't know. He says, "Can you come into the city?" And I, you know, like by 1. And I was like, "Sure." And that was literally it. I'm sure maybe if I had been more of a bump on the log, I wouldn't have gotten the job. But
Yeah.
but that was pretty much how it started.
Okay.
And I worked on a mortgage trading desk, and then I did the whole normal thing. Went to business school, came back out, worked for a consulting company, and then I worked for, and then I ended up working for a couple of large money management companies. Got to the point where I was responsible for managing between $3 and $4 billion, depending
Wow.
upon depending upon the assignment
Yeah.
at the time. And it was all in fixed income bonds. I was never really a stock or an equities guy. I never liked I'm a numbers guy, right? And so I never liked the emotions that follow the stock market
Sure.
versus bonds, right? Bonds, you can do the math.
Right.
You have to do now. Of course, one of my key skills was as a credit analyst, and so we had to look at companies and decide what are the chances of them being able to pay you back, right? So
Yeah.
that was important, but still, you could do the math.
Sure.
Where the stock market's a little more difficult, and so it was really just, I mean, literally my career just sailed along, no problems until the financial crisis of about 10 years ago, right?
Sure.
And so that's that's where things changed, and that's where I did my first 180, and I did a few things. Started a couple companies, one with a team, another one with just one partner, and both of those companies basically got put out of business by the actions, frankly, of the government and the way they were bailing out the banks.
Sure.
And I just got so fed up, frankly, with the fact that I thought someone else was impacting my career, and I had no control over it. Working in banking, I'm sure you've had plenty of those instances, right?
Of course.
So I said, I'm done. I'm done with this. And what can I do that's completely different? Now, of course, I was looking to start a business in 2009, 2010. It wasn't really a great time, but one of the things that people always need, food. And the barriers to entry, right, or in the food business are generally lower than other businesses. And so I said, okay, I can get into the food business, but it has to be something that I can sort of dig into. And I'm analytical by nature. I'm a process guy. I was a MIS major in college, so computer programming, processes, that's all my gig, right? And so I was looking around for what to do, and I had a friend from business school who had started a sushi company, a grab-and-go sushi company in Kansas City, of all places.
Nice town.
Yeah, it is a great town. Well, he said he always told me he wanted to be the Taco Bell of sushi. He wanted to expand sushi's.
Okay.
I said, okay, listen, I'm intrigued. Can we at least make it the Chipotle of sushi?
I was gonna say Taco Bell. Like, I don't know if Yo Quiero Sushi's gonna go over well in the marketplace, but
I didn't think so
either.
But I also told him, I said, listen, I don't know anything about running a restaurant, but I think sushi makes sense. It's healthy. I feel good selling it to people, and the thing about sushi that most people don't realize is that it lends itself to a process very well, because most sushi is really just assembly. The only thing you cook is the rice,
right?
And so if you do that correctly and you get fresh and high quality ingredients, you basically just need people with knife skills, and then you show them how to assemble the sushi. And so that's what we did. We set up. I got a place here in Atlanta, and I said I was not going to do any retail, so it was not a restaurant. And we just delivered sushi to corporate clients. So I knew I could sell this product to clients, cafeterias, schools, hospitals. So we ended up, by the time I sold the company, we were delivering to just about every major university in the area, including UGA and Georgia State, Emory, Georgia Tech. We delivered to almost every hospital in the metro Atlanta area, and corporate clients again. And it was because of we could make it fresh, and we could deliver it. And so we were, the other thing, we were more of a logistics company, frankly, than a food company sometimes, because we had to deliver all these things in a fresh nature. But so that went along, and I probably spent a little bit too much time talking about that. Although it was a very interesting period of my life. My son was born the last year that I had the sushi business, and that changes things, as you know.
Absolutely.
And so my wife, being a physician, would be on call, and she'd have to go into the hospital, overnight, different times. And we did our sushi production overnight in order to have it be as fresh as possible for the lunch hour the next day.
Yeah.
And so once you get a baby at home, you can't very well have two parents leave the house at the same time. It doesn't quite work that way. So we said that's not right for our family. And thankfully, I was able to sell the company. And they're still delivering today, which is great. And I did basically what I say is the greatest job that I've had so far in my life, which was stay-at-home dad. And I did that for first 4 years of my son's life till he ended up going to kindergarten.
Yeah.
And then that leads me to my second 180, where I
Yeah.
got back to where I started, finance. And people kept telling me, John, you should get into personal finance. You need to help people because there's too much crap going on. And you've seen it. You know what happens in the business. But I got to tell you, I wasn't really thrilled about the idea of selling anything to anybody.
Sure.
I didn't want to sell them a product. One thing that turned me off of financial advisory in the past was, that they always had something to sell you, whether it was a mutual fund, an insurance product, and it was something was being sold.
Sure.
And I didn't care for that. And frankly, again, referencing back to the equities markets that I didn't really love in the past, I was not going to pick a stock for somebody. That's not something that I felt that I could do. And frankly, it's not something that I feel anybody can do. I don't, and that's right. Borne out in study after study, no one outperforms the market in active management for a long period of time.
Right.
You can find some people to do it for a short period of time, right? But eventually, it'll go against them, and they will, fail to do that.
Right.
And so
exactly.
Really, what allowed me to get into this business that I'm now doing is sort of, and it's not that new, right? But it's getting newer. The whole idea of passive investing, making use of index funds and ETFs, and simplifying people's finances instead of coming up with these crazy portfolios in a misguided attempt to outperform the market, or even to say quote unquote protect against a downturn. I think these things are tools and words of the salesman to get people either frightened enough to work with them or excited enough because they think they're going to get something that no one else has.
Right.
And so I couldn't do that, but you can now put together for clients simple portfolios for them and have them take advantage of just taking what the market gives, because the market is going to do what the market is going to do.
Right.
And then focusing on really, and we're I don't know how many minutes into our chat, and I'm finally talking about focusing on really what I want to do and do for my clients, which is help them with their comprehensive financial planning, to use the favored term, right?
Yeah.
I'm a comprehensive financial planner. I'm associated with the Alliance of Comprehensive Financial Planners, and on top of all that, I like to layer on the what I call the special sauce, which is that we all hear about fee only. That's a popular buzzword right in the industry.
Yeah, it is.
Well, fee only is great, but you caught me on a day where I'm kind of fired up about this, because I just got an email from I'm hitting on my other screen. It's like Financial Advisor magazine reporting the DOL came out with their new advisory, and under their new fiduciary rule, they are allowing third-party compensation to advisors. So advisors can tell people that they are a fiduciary while not disclosing that they receive third-party payment for, surprise, the sale of financial products.
Good grief.
This is coming on the heels of the CFP board. They basically did sort of the same thing, and I've got articles popped up on my other screen. CFP board provides cover for lying financial advisors. CFP board must right its wrong and change its call on advisor comp transparency, because the CFP board removed from their website. They used to have the way that financial advisors, CFPs, were compensated. They removed it from their website. So this whole idea, and I'll use it is crazy. And so it takes me to my other word that I love to hate, which is fiduciary. So everybody wants to, oh, well, geez, I've heard that word fiduciary. They look it up on Google, and it says that if an advisor is fiduciary, they must act in my best interest. Well, that's great, right? But it's such a squishy word. And here we are, the CFP board, and that's for people I'm sure listening to this podcast, they know, but it's the Certified Financial Planner.
Right.
The CFP board does not prevent their advisors, CFPs, from taking commissions or third-party payments for products. So I don't know about you, but to me, I say that's not fiduciary, because
that's dicey. Yeah,
it's very dicey. It's a good way to put it, because if you want to assure yourself that your advisor, any advisor working for any company, I don't care, is going to act only in your best interest, they have to answer really two questions. The first one is how are you paid? And the second is how much in total fees and will I be paying for you, and fees and costs that will I be paying for your services. And if you look at the websites of, tons and tons of quote unquote fee only financial planners, most of them do not disclose their fees on their website. You have to dig into their Form ADVs in order to figure out what they are.
Right.
I don't see how that's transparent. I don't see how not being transparent is acting in your customer's best interest.
Right.
And you could probably hear it in my voice. I get a little fired up about this because this is really what I love to do for folks. I love, because it doesn't matter if people become my clients. I want them to go, and if they're considering working with an investment advisor, interview advisors, ask the right questions, and you don't have to have a laundry list of questions. Now, there's always interesting things to know. Okay, where if I work with you and I custodian my money with you, where does it go? Blah blah blah. Right? Those are all good questions that you will need the answer to.
Of course.
But if you're going to decide whether to work with somebody, you've got to know how they're going to get paid, because if they're getting paid via commission, or if they're getting paid by a third party for the sale of another product, even if it's not classified as a commission, because these third parties may pay their firms, not the advisors. Right. And then the advisors paid in turn by their firm, little bonuses and things like that. Well,
right.
Shocker. It's the same idea.
Right.
You don't know that, because if a person is making a decision that's in their best interest, there's no way that you can be assured that it's in your best interest as well.
Right.
So it's sort of my soapbox. I get on top of. I love to talk about index funds. I love to talk about this other stuff, but it's really the industry that I decided to get back into, and especially the arm of the industry, the sector that I'm in terms of personal financial advisory. This is something that does get me excited.
Sure.
Because I don't like what happens to people when they get taken advantage of by their advisors. And it happens, frankly, the advisors don't have to be doing it on purpose. It can be happening because of that's the way they've always done it. And it's true, right? Traditionally in our business, the assets under management model has been the model in terms of how do you compensate your financial planner or your investment advisor.
Sure.
And for folks that don't, I don't want to again use too much jargon, but an assets under management model means that your advisor charges you a percentage of however much money you have invested with them every year. And so if the market goes up and your investments go up in value, then you're going to pay that advisor more next year.
Yep.
Why?
Exactly.
Did he or she do anything?
No.
chances are they didn't. They may have done something that cost you money, but if the market went up, that's not their fault or to their credit. What if people will say, well, my advisor's great. He's given me an X% return over the
Right.
last 10 years. Oh, yeah, okay, great. Again, ask how much in total fees have you been paying to that advisor? And most people don't know because it's buried. They only have to report it quarterly,
Right.
not even on their monthly statements. And it's buried in the back page, what's been sold out of your account and how much you paid the advisor.
Right.
The other example I say, okay, suppose you have $1 million with an advisor. So he's charges you the typical 1%. So you're paying $10,000 a year to that advisor. And you receive an inheritance of $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
Now you don't know what else to do it. So you put it with your advisor. He's done a good job for you.
Right.
He puts it in the same stuff that he already has your $1 million invested in. Now you are paying him $20,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Did that advisor do anything?
Right. The ball keeps moving down the field with them.
It sure does. So I'm probably belaboring this point a little bit, but that's exactly why I think the only way that you can truly be fiduciary, act in your client's best interest, would be to cut your fee or lower it, or hey, maybe the best way would be to go with a flat fee where the person knows exactly what they're paying each year for you and your services. And if they feel that's a fair price, then it might be a good fit. If they feel it's too much, hey, there are plenty of advisors. But the fee, my fee, it will not increase if the markets go up. It will not increase if you are a diligent saver and put more money invested under my care. And so that's the only way, frankly, that I feel that advisors can be truly fiduciary to their clients.
And I want to get back to that fiduciary point, John, because you gave me a lot to unpack there. Because you answered a lot of my questions that I had.
I was going for it.
No, I love it. Yeah, definitely, that's great. I love when you go for it like that, because it makes for a great pod. So a lot to unpack there. Let's we'll wind back just a little bit, because when you transitioned, so you had some pretty interesting career transitions. So let's go back to when you first were in the financial sector and the downturn takes place. Now, I shared with you kind of offline my banking background, and I certainly remember that happening. I remember when it first started coming on, I was in the business banking field, and we used to have these one-page, we could do $50,000 loans off a one-page app, no financials, no nothing other than you had CIP, obviously with the Patriot Act. So you had to make sure that you got identification from the individual. But if they had the credit score, they could get $50,000. Mm-hmm. And when that dried up, I knew something was going on. When that just kind of went away out the blue, and now all of a sudden, we're having meetings not about production, but about collecting payments. So as a business banker, where we normally would have a whole collections department, now we're participating in collections. I was still pretty young, but I knew what was kind of happening. So, John, take me back to that time, because I'm interested from your perspective as someone who's been involved with Wall Street. You've, obviously managed, assets and things of that nature. And you became you were kind of like me, you became fed up with kind of what you saw. You saw it probably at a better viewpoint than I did. What are some of the things that you saw? Or was there anything that took place that gave you kind of cause for pause during that whole era? And also, along with that, did you see anything unscrupulous? Because obviously the financial industry gets the blunt of the blame for what took place, obviously with all the derivatives. And, you mentioned being on the mortgage side of it. Obviously, we know it's well documented what happened there. But, did you see or hear anything that gave you cause for pause then?
Yeah. So here's and I'm going to really work hard to keep this short. You could keep me on track, Ron.
Yeah, I will.
I'm going to depend on you. So the funds that I managed, most of them, they were all asset-backed securities, and the majority of them were home equity loans, but home equity included all the term home equity includes all subprime mortgage loans, as well as what they call alt A, right? You're familiar with that, but
Yep, I am.
those are alternative style mortgages where people would put down less than the traditional 20%.
Sure.
And in that part of the industry, like you said, it's been investigated where people went to no income verification loans, no documentation loans, to where you could basically and I would do due diligence. I would go to these big lending shops like Countrywide, and their guys would tell us, they would literally say, "Oh yeah," and you would have to go to the people that were on the floor. The managers wouldn't say this, but like, "Oh yeah, we'll lend to anybody that'll fog a mirror," and I heard that kind of stuff, but I didn't think I know it sounds naive, but I didn't think that much of it, because I thought that enough people would do their jobs the right way, sort of, I don't say correctly, but without basically breaking every kind of financial law that you can imagine. And I don't mean law like put you in jail law, but the types of, like, don't lend to somebody who doesn't have any income, that type of law. And I remember this, and this was a key memory from that period for me, and you asked me for that, is that we were, my partner and I, we were co-managing this fund that was, again, probably like $1.5 billion at the time, and we were recommending an investment in a certain esoteric subprime mortgage.
Yeah,
it was a derivative.
Sure.
And my boss said to both of us, we just made this big presentation to him. We did all this analysis. We had visited these companies, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And he looked at us across his desk and he said, "What if there's massive fraud?" And we both kind of giggled. We're in our 30s. We figure we're doing this stuff,
Right.
and we're like, well, you've got to be kidding. What's this massive fraud? What do you mean? And
Right.
He's like, no, what if there's massive fraud? What if the appraisals are wrong? What if they're lending to people to on properties that don't exist?
Right.
What if all these questions, and we wrote it off, and he allowed us to make that investment, which, because it was a very short-term investment, it made good money for the firm and for our clients. But that always stuck with me, because it wasn't 2 years, 3 years later that everything hit the fan. The entire world economy practically blew up, because guess what? There was massive fraud.
Of course.
And
Of course
so
there was.
Yeah, and I like to see the best. I like to see the best in people. I always do. I'm an optimist. Glasses always half full. All that kind of stuff. And so it took me down a peg, in a sense, because I couldn't believe that so many people on every level, down, from the property appraiser to the loan officer, up through the management, and then even, and the collections agencies, it was lunacy. And everybody was doing it. Now, here I'm going to say, they were doing it because what they were doing, this won't be a surprise. Each person was doing what was in their best interest.
Of course.
If I close 10 more loans this month, I get a big bonus.
Right.
If I send in appraisals to the bank and they're all below the lending number, where the loan wanted to, the buyer wanted the loan to be at, then the loan won't close, and they won't send me more appraisal business, and on down the line, even to the Wall Street guys, who, again, there was a lot of blame for Wall Street.
Sure.
But because they would be like, well, this deal will close, and I'll get this massive bonus this year as well. And
Right.
if it goes bad, the investors will take the hit, and they won't even know for 2 to 5 years. So by that time, I'll be on to another. I'll be working at another bank, and
Right.
so it was a massive cascade of fraud.
Right. Of
but
course.
each person was doing what was in their best interest.
Yeah, they were motivated by
not in their client's best interest, not in their customer's best interest, but just in their best interest. And that's why, again, I circle back to you have to ask these questions, because of if we had asked more of those questions about, I mean, I don't want to pick on appraisers, but I'll say it, because if none of these properties that all turned out to be worth, half of what the loans that were given to them on them were, maybe we wouldn't have had that massive home price appreciation that we had in the 2000s, that allowed for all these new loans and the refinancings and the money out, cash out refis, and all this crazy stuff that contributed again to the financial crisis of 09 or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you putting it that way, because that's kind of the plain and simple. Is there was a lot of fraud, and then there was motivation for every component. Like you talked about being a process guy, so John, there's the down the line of the process flow, everybody had an incentive and could push off the risk to somebody else in the process. And so at some point, the bottleneck takes place, right?
Yep.
You keep passing the hot potato, and then someone's holding it when the music stops, right? And they don't have a chair. And so as that was happening, all of a sudden, everybody's standing, nobody's got a chair. And the people that didn't have the chair were the American people.
Right.
Not to sound like a politician, but
no,
that's what ended up happening, was people end up being the ones not having a chair to sit in.
Yeah. And I think, and so, that's firing up all sorts of memories, because I haven't gotten through that with anybody in the detail that we just did in quite a while. But I think you can imagine why I threw my hands up and said, I'm going to make some people some food, and that's going to make them happy, because if people food makes people happy, right?
Sure.
And I still love the food business. I love the people that I met in the food business. I met chefs, from the guys, again, working in the kitchen, to some people that would be considered celebrity chefs. If a person has chosen the food industry as their career, I really feel like they do it because, again, they want to make people happy through food. They know that somebody walks into their door, they hand them something, the person eats it, and that makes them feel better, whether it's for 5 minutes or the rest of the day, or they could be talking about it for ages. I got the biggest kick out of it when people would try our sushi. I'd bring in this packaged sushi, because and nobody thought packaged sushi could taste good, right? But it did, because we took very good care of the product, and that's. I'd like to apply that again to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. John Stoj is our guest today, investment advisor with Vantage Financial. Verbatim Financial. No, I said Vantage. Verbatim Financial. So, let's go here, John, because, we can kind of, I know we could probably talk all day about 08 and 09 and kind of those pieces of it. So you make this transition into the restaurant business, and I heard you say you kind of viewed it or operated more as a logistics company, which was intriguing. And your breakdown of how sushi could be distributed. I love that. It verifies your process thinking and your analytical thinking in that. So, take me to your family, because, it's very tricky. I've got 3 young daughters, elementary school age daughters, as everybody here on MYB knows. So your son is born, you're a stay-at-home dad for some time. Walk me through that process, because obviously in today's COVID, environment, right? Many people have found themselves to be stay-at-home parents again, whether they wanted to or not. So walk me through kind of that process and kind of what you did. Did you dibble and dab in any kind of business, or were you solely kind of focused as kind of stay-at-home dad there with your son and that sort of thing?
Sure, sure. I'm going to go back and say I look back already, just not that long ago at all, because my son's only about to turn 7.
Yeah.
And I see it as as a really beautiful period. Obviously at the time, not every day was quite as beautiful as, if you have anybody who's had small children around, they can be challenging,
Right.
but it was great. For the first couple of years, yeah, I was dad. And because babies need attention, a lot of attention, right? And then I started to dabble back in the business world. I did some consulting for some friends. I helped a friend of mine who owns an appliance store. He had never really thought about any sort of marketing, or he didn't run the business again as a business. He sort of ran it as almost a hobby, and so I helped them put some sort of controls in place there, and that was a lot of fun. But I always felt a draw back to finance, and
Sure.
so that is what led me here. Now, that was a bit of a winding road too, because I had another friend who, and I should have realized this right away. I mean, great guy, but one of the best salesmen that I've ever met. He's so good, and so he had an idea that we should start working with a company that did investment advisory theoretically, but also sold insurance. And I think you can imagine where this is going.
Sure.
He said, well, listen, I can sell insurance, but I don't know
Sure.
anything about investing. We can work together, and you can be the financial advisor and I'll sell the insurance. Yeah, I mean, it sounded like a reasonable idea. People do need insurance. It's true.
Sure.
What they don't need is the most expensive kind of insurance that pays the salesperson the greatest
The big
commission.
Going back to what you were talking about earlier about
Yes.
motivation. Right.
Yep. And so I actually worked with this company, and I was associated with Transamerica Financial Advisors, which I thought, hey, this is a real company, Transamerica. But I tell people that I did pro bono financial advisory for almost a year because of, and I know I met with a little over 80 people, 83 people, I think. And a number of them, several dozen, were quote unquote my clients, doing the air quotes. But what I found was that I worked with them. I spent hours with each of these people or families, and I'd help them put together budgets. Many of them never had a budget before, which a lot of people don't. It's kind of important. But I worked with them, and we would go through and try to figure out what they needed, what would be in their best interest to do to plan for their financial future, would be it their retirement in 20 years or in 5 years. And what I found each time that I got to the end of the road was that there was nothing that I could do for them that would pay me anything that was right for them. So I could have easily sold them. A popular product to sell was a IUL, Index Universal Life Policy. It's a cash value policy, which they try to convince people is a way to invest in the market without downside risk. It's all baloney. But I found that nobody needed that policy. And that was the only way I was going to get paid. Or I could have them invest in a certain mutual fund that would pay me a commission, but it wasn't the best fund for them.
Right.
So after 9 or 10 months of not selling anything because there was nothing good to sell, I threw up my hands, and thank God one of my friends from high school of all places had been running a flat fee fee-only investment advisory company for about a dozen years or so, and it was funny. His words came back to me a lot like my boss, who asked me about the massive fraud. When I told my buddy who had the advisory company what I was doing with Transamerica, he said, I don't think you're gonna like that. And I said, why? It seems great. I think I can do this. My buddy's gonna sell the insurance, blah, 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 blah. He said, you know what? You're an adult. I can't tell you. I can't tell you why you're not gonna like it, but I know you. I've known you for 40 years. You're not gonna like it. I'm like, oh, okay. And I was sure he was wrong. I was sure he was wrong, because if I am so smart and that I'll be able to smash that square peg into the round hole, right?
Sure.
But he was right. I was wrong.
Yeah. Well, again, John Stoj, our guest today, Verbatim Financial, out of Atlanta, Georgia. So so you had this transition. You obviously have your son that changes your mindset. That a lot of the way you view things personally and professionally, as you described, John. You get back into the business, and you've already kind of described kind of your mindset and getting back into the business and how you want to help people. So today, let's kind of bring it fast forward to today. Mm-hmm. So today, are you working with clientele kind of all over the country? Are you mostly kind of working with people there and around the Atlanta area? Give us a breakdown of kind of how your practice is, how it is, and where you're looking to take it.
Sure. So my firm is new, and we're established. I say we, but it's me. I am Verbatim Financial. I established the firm in February, right before
all this. Oh, wow.
COVID hit.
Oh yeah. So okay. So let's dive into that, because so you start this business literally 30 days or less before the pandemic hits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So at the time the pandemic hits, do you have customers? Are you managing?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So you are.
So I am. And often people. So here's the funny thing: when everything started happening in March and when the markets went crazy, my clients were okay. And what I mean by okay is that I don't mean that their money in their accounts didn't on paper go down. Everybody's did. But they were okay because the people that I work with, if they've chosen me as much as I've chosen to work with them, then they buy in, again, to this idea that we don't control the markets. I can't control the markets. We can make a plan, the best plan that we can that works for you or your family. And I don't want to say hope that it goes well, but really, that's all we can do. We can work hard. We can be diligent. We can make our plan. If things change, we update the plan. That's why you have a long-term relationship with a planner or advisor, whatever you want to call that person.
Yeah.
But I didn't get any calls from anyone saying, "Oh my God, what should I do? Should I sell?" Because they had bought in to the concept. I got calls from people who were just friends of mine and people who know that I'm in the industry, and they are Facebook messaging me. They're texting me like, "Should I go all cash? Should I do this? Should I do that?" And it's unbelievable. I mean, super smart people too. I mean, people who have, I don't know how many IQ points on top of mine.
Right.
But it's emotional. You see this happening.
It is very emotional.
And I take credit for saving several friends. I don't know how much money, because of, heck, most of them have more money than I do. That's for sure. If they had sold when they kept texting day after day, "Should I sell everything, go all cash?" If they had done that prior to the market recovery,
right, they suffered a lot of loss.
Exactly, and because I would always ask them, "Okay, well, that's great. You want to sell when?" "Well, when the market gets down to this level, I want to sell." "Okay." And then when you want to get back in? "Well, when the market gets above that level, I'll get back in." So basically, you're telling me in an ideal situation, you want to just lock in a loss.
Right.
And they'd be like, well, if you put it that way, I guess it doesn't sound that smart.
Yeah. Yeah. Why would you do that?
But that's what people do. And
Right.
there's
Yeah.
plenty
They're
of
risk
there's
averse. So yeah, they're going to, yeah.
and there's plenty of of studies, that'll show that, and that if you tend to believe that there's value that you provide to your clients, and frankly, even advisors who I might not think are working in a true 100% fiduciary capacity with their clients, they're doing it with, in their mind, they're doing it for their clients, not for them.
Right.
And just by having an advisor, that can be beneficial for folks. So yeah, does it cost them a little more because of the way that the fees are charged and all that fun stuff? It
Sure.
can cost a lot more over the course of time. But what I'm saying is that kind of value, I think, is out there from a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. And so where do you see, John, next steps for you? Obviously, no one has the crystal ball to know where the pandemic's going to go. And, I don't know if it ever ceases or does it just get mitigated enough that we all just live with it, whatever that is. But where do you see your business as we progress through the pandemic? Because from my vantage point, I would suggest that your model would work well in you helping people navigate, right? So because you don't have this long reputation of just being like you say, slash and burn, let me get you in the highest product that makes money for you, right? I think that approach is going to help people navigate through this whole thing. And again, there's some people doing very well through this. I mean, we don't want to paint the picture that everybody's been impacted. There's certainly millions and millions of people that have been impacted by this and will continue to be. And then there's some people who are doing extremely, extremely well. Mm-hmm. In some cases, even better than they were pre-pandemic. So, walk us through and unpack that. Where do you kind of see the direction of your business? Do you see yourself hiring other, financial planners and advisors and kind of growing that route, or?
At this point, I have a medium and a long-term plan. My medium-term plan, I have a limit on the number of clients that I can take on because each person does take effort. You need to devote the right amount of time throughout the course of a year to a client. And one advisor, the number that I see bandied about, which I think is probably pretty reasonable, is that one standalone advisor can usually handle about 70, 75 clients. Some people do more, for sure. I will cut my client number off probably closer to the 50 number until my son is a bit older.
Sure.
Because I still handle a lot of the day-to-day management of his life, which I love. And so in order to devote the right amount of time to my clients and to him and to my wife, frankly,
sure.
That's where I'll cut off. So I've got a little bit of growth to go, but there's that'll fill up because I think, like you say, this period that we're going through, this stress, it does cause people to think a little bit, which is nice. It causes them to think a little bit about the future. And if you think about it and you realize you should be doing something, or you think, I should say, you think you should be doing something, then reaching out to a professional can help, and I'm able to do that. So that's what I sort of see my situation on the medium term. Longer term, it's possible. Yeah. There are people that enjoy just planning, not working, not working with clients directly.
Yeah.
And so I could hire a person like that to do that kind of, for lack of a better term, back office work. Still extremely valuable work. But right now I do that myself.
Okay.
And I'll do that, for the foreseeable near-term future, without a doubt.
Yep, no doubt about it. So
I do want to say one more thing.
Yeah,
that I
please.
forgot, because you referenced helping, and it's true. I want to help my clients, but one of the things that I've been working on, and I'll be rolling out. I've been doing this on an ad hoc basis, but it goes back to my food business experience. So people in the food business aren't usually the most highly paid
Sure.
folks in the world. And they get taken advantage of a lot. I saw it. I saw they get taken advantage of by employers. They get taken advantage of by, again, salespeople. And they don't save well. It's just the nature of the business. For one reason or another, you don't like to stereotype, but I just did. I'm sorry, but it is the nature of the business. It's the type of giving folks that are in that business. It opens them up, I think, to being taken advantage of. So I've helped some people that I know in the Atlanta area.
Sure.
Just completely pro bono work, because I want to give back to that industry. So that's something that I'm doing. I'm putting together a course that I'll give to restaurant staff and things like that, just to try to keep them from losing money if possible, and maybe allowing them to save just a little bit.
Yep, no doubt about it. And so, let's get into something, kind of fun a little bit, because since we're talking about money, we're talking about finance, John. If I were to bring you $100 million cash money, I roll it with a brake truck to your house, no strings attached, no repayment, no nothing, just $100 million in cash. I say, okay, boys, bring it in. And they just walk in with $100 million in cash. What would you do with that, and why?
That's a great question. I really wish it was a realistic possibility.
Oh, this is real. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So, the first thing I would do is I'd pay off our house. We talk about this a lot. We love where we live. We wouldn't move. We wouldn't, buy a bigger house or go somewhere else.
Sure.
So we'd pay off our house. My wife loves her job. She is drawn to caring for her patients.
Okay.
And so she would want to continue doing that. So
sure.
I would put enough away in a bond fund, secure
there
bond
you go,
fund,
of course. Yeah.
to pay for my son's schooling,
sure.
and probably enough away to set us up as a family for retirement. And then, I would establish some sort of philanthropic endeavor. When I used to, what would it be right here in Atlanta? It's hard to know. There's some great people doing really good work.
Sure.
I have some friends who work with the homeless in the city center.
Of course.
So there's people who I know need the money. But the best way that I used to that I could tell you to describe it would be when I used to live in New Jersey, and I'd take the train in from New Jersey through Newark and some of the industrial areas of Jersey into Manhattan. I would see all these areas that were once beautiful. The architecture was great. There these old historic buildings, but had really fallen on hard times. And then, frankly, just a lot of trash all along the way because of people were not taking care of the area. And I used to think about when I was 23, 24, riding that train, I would think if I make my millions in Wall Street, which I will admit to you did not happen, but if I make my millions on Wall Street, I'm going to clean up this whole area. I'm going to get some sort of something together, and we're going to clean it all up.
Right.
And that's so really, I mean, that whole idea of going through these historic districts in a city like Atlanta or again Newark, this is what I love. I'd love to do. So I think if I had $100 million, and probably all I would need was, and when I say all I would need, this is what a joke, $10 million for myself. That's
right.
Most people, right? It's a bit hubristic to say even that I need that much, which I don't. But
right.
I have not, $90 million to put aside for something like that, I think would go a long way.
Yeah, certainly would make an impact, no doubt about it. So, John, let's kind of wrap things up here. Because you've shared tremendous insight, tremendous nuggets here with the audience. This has been enjoyable to say the least. What are one or two best practices? Again, and I work with a lot of people in career transition. Matter of fact, I'm hosting a career transition virtual meeting tonight.
Super.
Here in Memphis, and again, working with that group that helps people that are in transition. Which, I mean, if there's any time that people need help, it's now. What are one or two best practices that have helped you that you'd like to share with the audience as you've been able to successfully transition and somewhat reinvent yourself? Even in a young point in your career, you've been be able to reinvent yourself more than once, right? Mm-hmm. And you certainly obviously have a long way to go, but in your career, but it takes something innate to be able to do that. So what are one or two best practices that have worked for you that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So I think the first is something that I have suggested folks think about, clients of mine, but also friends, when they're transitioning, a lot like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's to think about, think about the exit strategy of whatever they're thinking of doing next.
Sure.
And I don't mean like when you're going to quit and pull the ripcord. I don't mean that. I mean, when you're ready, what is getting out of it going to look like?
Sure.
What will it look like if things have gone really well? What will it look like if maybe it hasn't gone that well? Because people do a lot of things in their life, especially entrepreneurial folks, business owners. They'll start businesses. They could be super successful at them, but then they don't know what to do when it's time to move to the next part of their life, whether
Right.
they want to retire, whether it's like what happened to me and that we started a family and that wasn't the right fit for us anymore.
Right.
The reason why I was able to sell the sushi business was because I had planned on how to sell it when I was starting it.
Yeah.
And that's a key. If I hadn't established these processes, and if I hadn't have cataloged them and logged them and made sure that everything was written down, then when I brought in potential buyers, they would not have known what they were buying. But they could walk into my GM's office and they could see a binder for every process, and they knew that the company wasn't me. And so when I left, the customers weren't going to leave, and that's it's hugely important. Well, you can apply that same idea to a job choice, or something like that. And so I think that's really important.
Sure.
And the second thing, it's almost a part two, but it's that try to think of what you would do. It's a lot. Frankly, it's a little bit like your $100 million question. But what would you do if things go really well? And what I mean by that is, more people do think about what will happen if things don't go well. Like, what if I can't? What if I can't? I need revenue of X dollars in order to make this business work. What if I can't get there? What do I do? How do I get out of the lease if I leased office space? Things like that.
Very true.
But something that people don't think quite as much of is what happens if I get that miracle order and the guy comes and says, "You make 100 widgets a week. I need 10,000.
Wow.
Can you do it? How would you do it? Would you be able to?" And just to think that through, I think it doesn't mean that you buy if you're a manufacturing firm, you buy a machine that's 10 times as big as you need it to be. But but it means having in your back pocket the idea, and
right.
And that stemmed. I'm not the only person to come up with that idea, but for me personally, it stemmed from the fact that it happened to me.
Yeah.
In the sushi business. I've been pursuing selling sushi to the Atlanta public schools for several years. And I had plenty of talks with the chefs, and even with the superintendent of schools. Yeah. And I just never went anywhere. And then I got a call in June, a few years ago, obviously. And the chef said, "Okay, I think we're going to do it. Can you deliver 60,000 pieces of sushi on August 18th?" And I'm like, I mean, my jaw hit the. I'm like,
Right.
no, no, and I had to. It took weeks of walking through why that is not logistically possible, and we got to the point where I did get that account, but that
Right.
that was the kind of thing where I'm like, well, I have to give up on what is potentially the biggest deal of my company's existence.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I love that point because I've made that point as well, John. That oftentimes people, and this is whether in business or personally, it doesn't matter. They tend to look for the negative, right? They look for what's not going to work, and they look for all the reasons and excuses as to why something won't work or why something won't happen. And oftentimes you have to redirect them to think about, what if things do work? Or
Yes.
what if things work extremely well, even more than what, because, and I've run into this issue, personally myself, which was, it created more angst for me than the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was, I had ran into a situation where I had a co-working business that jumped off faster than I was prepared for it to do. I thought it was going to do X. It ended up doing way beyond X
Right.
very quickly. And so that kept me up at night, right?
Yeah.
And so I share with people that there is a great chance that anything that you do personally or professionally could blow up, and you want to be prepared for when and if something goes extremely well, right, or even better than you hope for, and then that creates, which can be a good problem, but it creates other concerns, other issues really quick. I'll give you something else real quick, John, because like you, I expanded my business during COVID. So
Right.
I've been doing the podcast for almost 3 years, but out of the necessity of demand, I launched Brand Pod, where I help others, and I've helped a handful of banks now launch their own podcast platform.
Yeah.
Well, they were listening to my podcast, so you and I guess a few other people listen to this. But so they were listening to my podcast, and they want to know, because I work with them, so we have a relationship, and they want to know, Ron, how do we connect with our customers who aren't walking in the branches anymore? Right, we're closing our lobbies. There's only so many emails I can send out, but we want to be able to share our story. So we thought about podcasting, but we don't know how to do it. There's nobody in here knows. I mean, we've got some microphones laying around, and so they were like, "Well, can you help us?" And I said, "Well, I don't really do that. I do mine, but I don't really do that." "Well, think about it, because we'll pay you, And so, okay. So
Right.
I get off. I think of a name. I get an EIN number. I start working with a developer on website, and then here we go. We've got Brand Pod. So I called them back within like a week and say, "I'm up and running. What you got?" And I'd researched and done all that. I was trying to figure out where I was going to fit in my pricing with my time and all that type of thing. And so I was able to do that. I told them what the price was. They were like, "Sure, I'll get you over to accounting." So now I get this check. I helped them launch their 30-minute interview podcast. And then here I go. I just start reaching out to banks and saying, "Hey, your buddy's down the street. This is what I'm doing for him. I think it'd be great for you." And so it just kind of came from the demand of it. But it's been a great business for me, and I see it prolonging because I've seen the numbers in this podcast go up. Many of my podcasting buddies have seen their numbers go up as people are looking for original content. As you don't have live sports and the movie theaters are closed, and there's only so much you can watch on Netflix and Disney Plus, right?
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, and so I love that point that you made because, and now again, going along with your point, let's just say 30 banks call me all at once, right? Because they're very communal, and, when one bank CEO sees another one doing something, they're like, "Oh, the hell with you, I'm calling too," I'm not letting this prick over here get the drop on me. So all of a sudden you start getting all this demand. Well, it's just one me, right?
Right.
There's no way I can help 30 banks at once launch their podcast when they all want different things. So that would have been a huge, opportunity, but it would have been a huge thing. So that's something for me to think about versus, well, what if nobody wants to start their podcast, or what if nobody cares, or what if nobody likes,
Yep.
that's normally how we think. So I love that you mentioned that. So, John, listen, I can't thank you enough, man, for being here on this podcast. This has been tremendous. I love the simplicity you gave with kind of the explanation of 08 and 09. I love, your transition that you've been able to do successfully. And I love, and I can hear it in your voice, your care for your family, and obviously the love and admiration you have for them. That's tremendous as we all operate professionally. But, how can people get in touch with you? I think there are going to be some folks that are going to want to, extend this dialogue, or may have more specific questions, or you may have to talk them off the ledge too about selling.
Yeah. Well, the easiest way is really just to go to verbatimfinancial.com, and I've got a nice button on the top that says reach out, but there's information about the firm and me.
Sure.
Shocker, on the website, as well as the opportunity to download a white paper that I wrote about the difference between fee only, flat fee, and the word fiduciary. So
sure,
so that's an opportunity that people have just going to verbatimfinancial.com.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there, I imagine they'll be able to connect with you on social media and all those different places.
Yeah, I'm for better or for worse, I'm on basically every social media platform, and I could be found under the call sign Stoj Boy. So I am at Stoj Boy, which is STOJBOJ. If you remember from the beginning of our chat,
right?
Stoj Boy, pronounced or spelled STOJBOJ. Yeah. So that's, I think I'm on every platform that there is.
Yep, absolutely. And so MYB, that'll be in the show notes. You'll be able to click on that and go right to there. Follow, share, connect with John. Let him know that you heard him right here on the Minding Your Business podcast. Listen, John, again, thank you so much, my man. I look forward. I'd love to have you back as we progress through this. I'd love to hear some more about things that you're doing with the business, and how you're growing it and connecting, and ultimately, again, helping people find that financial security in a simplified and transparent way, man. So thank you for that, and best wishes to you and your family.
Oh, thanks so much. You too as well. I know how busy I am with one boy, 3 daughters.
Yeah, I'm here at home with them, and so I'm fortunate. They're at an age where they're somewhat self-sufficient, but you do have to be involved to see what they're doing. That's for sure.
Oh yeah.
So definitely, if we were going through this, say 7-8 years ago, I don't have any hair now. I mean, I probably wouldn't even have a nose or ears. I don't know. It's I couldn't imagine having, like really young kids, toddler age during this. So shout out to all of you that have been at home with toddlers. That's oh my goodness, that's wild, man. But listen, John, take care of the family, man. Best wishes again to you personally and professionally, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Ron. I hope so. This has been great.
Yep, excellent, man. We'll see you later.
Yep.
All right, so that was John Stoj with Verbatim Financial. Verbatim Financial. Go to verbatimfinancial.com. You can email john.stoj, that's STOJ, at verbatimfinancial.com, and you can also connect there on the website. So some interesting nuggets that he provided. Obviously, he was very close to what went on in 08 and 09, maybe not so much directly, but he was close enough to it to hear it and probably see some things. So I'm sure if we were to really get into it, he probably has some other stories about what took place, man. But anyway, thank y'all so much for being a part of this. Like I said, this was fun. John can definitely go, that's for sure. And I love that with guests love to share and kind of speak from the heart. So again, 5-star on Apple Podcast and wherever you get your pods. That helps us grow the audience. Brand Pod, which is brandyourpod.com. I spoke about it earlier with John. That's where you could go. I'd love to be able to be a resource for you. in helping you launch your own podcast platform. You need to do that. You need to own your own content. And now's the time. People are looking for you. They're not always on your timeline in social media. So you won't grow by telling the same people the same things over and over again. I repeat, you will not grow by telling the same people the same thing over and over again, year in and year out. You'll find yourself in the same spot year in and year out. You need to reach new audiences, people who care about what you're putting out there. Everybody on your timeline does not care. Okay? Everybody on your timeline does not care. Okay? You need to get with the people who care. The people who care are out there. All right? You need to get in front of them. That's how you grow. All right? If you're in it to grow. Now, if it's a hobby for you, that's fine. And some people are business hobbyists, right? They it's something for them to do other than nothing. All right? If you're beyond that, and there's nothing wrong with that, but if you're beyond that, then you want to grow, brandyourpod.com. I'd love to be a resource for you in doing that. The Minding Your Business directory is out and it's on and popping. Thank you so much. I've had people reach out to me to share it in their groups on social media. The email distribution has been great. I've already spoken to several of the banking associations and they're excited, ready to get the link. And so they're chomping at the bit to get that from me. It hasn't been all peaches, though. I had to work with a couple different developers on that to get it together. But I'm fortunate, very fortunate to get that together. So we'd love for you to be a part of it. Is there a cost? Yes, there's a cost. It is $240 per year. So $240 for the year, or there's an option for $30 per month if you prefer a monthly charge assessment. You can do that right from our site. It does it with PayPal or your credit or debit card, whichever one. And it'll set up, if you do the annual, it'll just set up every year. It'll just renew. And then if you do monthly, you'll just invoice that every month. But you want to be a part of that. That's going to go out again to several different networks. I will be investing to get that out there in several different spaces. And so you want your business info there. So go to themybpodcast.com/team, TEAM. So themybpodcast.com/team. You can see the directory. You can search. There's a search function for you to be able to search. If there was someone who was a guest on the Minding Your Business podcast, you will be able to click on a quick link to go to their episode, to listen to their episode, to hear more about them, which I know that's what you want to be able to do. So themybpodcast.com/team. Listen, I'm going to get out of here, folks. This has been tremendous. Thanks again to my guest, John Stoj with Verbatim Financial. And we look to have him back here at some point. Listen, you all be great. Remember the three things that we all have in common. We want to be great for ourselves, great for our families, and great for our communities. This is episode 167 of the Minding Your Business podcast. I'm your host, Champ Ron. We're going to catch you again on episode number 168 and keep moving. You do the same.